Honey bunches of fakers. Honey bunches of fakers. I am so tired of the LA Lakers basketball culture. It is toxic. It is the definition of entitlement. It's everything that's wrong with the NBA. Everything that's wrong with the NBA is embodied in the LA culture. Now, let me be very specific. I said this on Twitter. Y'all ain't finna call me no hater of LeBron James. I have been watching and supporting LeBron James on and off the court since 2002. I've been supporting Anthony Davis since 2012, his year out of Kentucky. I have always liked those individual players. Frank Vogel was good with the Indiana Pacers. I have never had issues with these individuals. But the Lakers culture has always been toxic. Now, a part of this is frustration as somebody who's from Denver. I grew up watching the LA Lakers. I grew up hearing all these stories about them. I grew up watching Kobe Bryant. Again, one of my favorite players, Shaquille O'Neal, Paul Gasol, Andrew Bynum, Ron Artest. I grew up watching them. I grew up hearing the narrative about the LA Lakers. Every time Kobe Bryant stepped on the court against Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, and J.R. Smith, and all these other folk, and Kenyon Martin, it was always like, man, the Lakers are supposed to blow this team out. They just the best team around. Now, they would win, but the thing was, it wasn't enjoyable watching the game because not only were you fighting against the players, Kobe was already one of the greatest players ever. I could deal with that. That's basketball. But you got to deal with the media. It's the constant onslaught of media narrative around the Lakers, of how great the team is. See, even the thing about tonight, had the Denver Nuggets won, it would have been, you know what, the Denver Nuggets won because the Lakers were hurt, because LeBron James wasn't playing. Not because Jamal Murray's been out, Monte Morris, Will Barton, and P.J. Dozier goes down with an injury. The Nuggets are missing their top four guards, their second best player. And you don't ever hear nothing about it. It's just like a cast off. It's like, oh man, like look at these little kids. Look what they doing. The Lakers are missing LeBron James. Oh, we got to worry about all these chemistry issues. Here I am watching the game. The MVP is playing for one team. Great player in Anthony Davis, but he ain't an MVP player. He's never been an MVP caliber player. He's never going to win an MVP more than likely because he's not that kind of player. He's never carried a team. He never could carry a team. He got a decent victory tonight. But here's the thing. Watching these games is mind-boggling. It's so frustrating. First off, the last call on Facu Campazzo, when Michael Porter Jr. hit that three-pointer, and they called a foul on Facu Campazzo, who's 5'10", 5'11", and Anthony Davis is 6'10", 250 pounds. They call a foul on Facu, and Anthony Davis flops on the ground, falls, gets the call, because of course he does. And that would have put them down 1 point when Michael Porter Jr. hitting that three-point shot. Now, again, Taylor Horton-Tucker made that little BS layup, man. Nikola Jokic is fighting off Marc Gasol. Austin Rivers doesn't play good defense, and he doesn't come back in for the rebound. And then he gets that stupid layup. So, but again, everything about the Lakers culture is toxic, man. And again, I feel like if you're a Lakers fan, you can at least identify with the reality that everyone that exists outside of your market has to hear about how great the Lakers are. Even the 6 years you did make the playoffs. Even in the 6 years you did make the playoffs. We had to hear it. Oh, how are we going to get the Lakers back on board? How are we going to get the Lakers back great? The NBA is better when the Lakers are good. I'm like, you know what? There's some truth to that, but like, y'all, the Lakers haven't drafted an all-star player since what, Magic Johnson? You didn't draft Kobe. Charlotte did. And stupidly traded him to you for Vlade Divac. I have been hearing about the Lakers and just this constant hype surrounding the team. Even today, the broadcast with Doris Burke, whom I love, 75% of the broadcast tonight was focused on the LA Lakers, man. It was just like, why am I always hearing this propaganda about this team? Just celebrate the fact they're playing against a 3 seed with a player who's overcoming the loss of his second best player, missing 4 other players, including 2 starters, and his 6th man. And this team is 9-1. Celebrate that fact. Celebrate that Michael Porter Jr. is healthy and emerging, become a star player. Stay on that. You want to talk about Anthony Davis? Cool. But every time you got to remind us about how decimated the LA Lakers are by injuries and having to work through all these issues in the shortest offseason ever. Well, guess what? The Nuggets were there with them. The Heat were there with them. The Celtics were there with them. Nuggets don't never get that kind of respect because you know what's going to happen, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Tomorrow, you're going to watch First Things First. You're going to watch Undisputed. You're going to watch First Take, and the whole thing's going to be on Anthony Davis and that stupid block he had on Facu Campazzo. That's all you're going to hear. Oh, man, look at the Lakers carrying it. Look at the Lakers carrying it. Nikola Jokic can't be the MVP. He lost to a LeBron James-led team without LeBron James in the game. He can't be MVP. Joel Embiid would have won that game. Really? Because when Ben Simmons was out, they was not just bad. They were terrible on defense, too. That's basketball, man. If Anthony Davis doesn't have LeBron James, they're not making the playoffs with that roster. If LeBron James don't have Anthony Davis, they ain't getting out of the first round in the West. Not against the top 4 seed. That's basketball. Alex Caruso played decent today. Caldwell Pope. Andre Drummond was terrible. Marc Gasol had his best game in weeks. But it took a historically, it took one of the worst shooting performances, not because of the Lakers' defense, some of it was, but the Nuggets they were 6 of 24 from 3. What do you want? What you want me to say about that? They were 6 of 24 from 3. What do you want me to say about that? What you want to say? That because the Lakers are playing vaunted defense? No, that's not what it was. I'm just tired, man. I'm tired of hearing the narrative surrounding the Lakers. I'm tired of people talking about them the way they do. They get so much respect whenever they step in the room. People are like, well, they're tied for the most championships ever. I'm like, okay. And? Right, the Lakers have won. They won 3 championships in the 2000s or early 2000s, and they won 2 more, and they finally won one. Y'all have to understand, man, if you ain't a Nuggets fan, they were at the bottom of the league for 6 years. LeBron James decides, because you got Hollywood right in L.A., he wants to become a mogul. LeBron James moves his family, takes his son to Sierra Canyon. LeBron James moves to L.A. to live on the beach. Because you're a coastal city, you get all of the perks that come with it without actually having to do the groundwork itself. Think about it, y'all. Listen. Nikola Jokic was the 41st pick in the second round. MVP. Jamal Murray, 7th pick in the lottery, drafted. All NBA caliber player. Michael Porter Jr., all NBA caliber future player, drafted. The Nuggets have drafted their core. And the Lakers haven't done any of that. The only person you got of relevance that you drafted was Kyle Kuzma. And he's not starting for the Nuggets. He's not starting for the Phoenix Suns. He's not starting for maybe even the Utah Jazz. Did he start over Royce O'Neal? But he gets so much credit, so much love. Alex Caruso, man, the dude has almost more BR posts, Bleacher Report posts than Jokic did last year. And Jokic was all NBA. It's just the way that the game is talked about with them. That's so frustrating. But again, man, that foul call on Facu Campazzo embodies the problem. It might not be real that there is a conspiracy or even that there is just this bias towards the Lakers. It might not be real. But the facts are, when that stuff happens more often than not, you can't but help but ask the question, what does a small market have to do? Facu Campazzo was a foot shorter than this man. Yeah, he can knock AD off his block. Now we missing PJ Dozier, who's out with a growing issue. It's so frustrating playing against the Lakers. I can't even talk about the game. Anthony Davis is flopping all over the place. Andre Drummond was flopping on that foul call on Yoke. Nikola Jokic tonight had no help basically until the fourth quarter. Only 2 other people had double digits. One was JaVale McGee. Nikola Jokic, 36 minutes, 32 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 12 of 28 shooting, 1 of 4 from the 3, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He was a +3 in the game they lost by 4. Michael Porter Jr., 40 minutes, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 8 of 15, 2 of 7, 1 of 2, and he was a 0. Aaron Gordon was a +8 on the night, man. So they had good minutes. They had good minutes from the starters for the most part. Facu Campazzo and PJ Dozier were in the negative, but they played with the bench for some time. And again, man, it's what happens when you don't have Jamal Murray in the game. And again, they can say the same thing. You don't got LeBron James. But here's the thing. When you play against the Lakers, you ain't playing just against the players. You're playing against the culture. You're playing against the referees. You're playing against the media. And then the thing is, when you do have good, you're not going to get respect, man. They're not. Jokic ain't going to get respect tomorrow. You see, if Anthony Davis puts up 32, 9, and 5 in a loss, man, he's overcome so much adversity this year. He's dealing with injuries, missed 30 games. Look at this game. He's on his way. The headline tomorrow is Anthony Davis back. Is he back? And it's just so frustrating, man. It's even hard to talk about the game because watching for the last several decades, as I have, watching the Lakers get talked about, watching the basketball games, and then now watching this tonight. The fact that Facu Campazzo can get that call in that key of a situation, and again, if you're a Lakers fan, you've made this far, the fact that he can get that call in that key of a situation, when the game's been physical all day, all freaking day it was physical. This was a 1996 low, slow, grind-out game, 93-89. And the fact that Facu Campazzo got that call on him, it just don't sit right. Because at least they're down one. And then at least if Horton Tucker hits that three, hits that two-pointer, that layup, at least they can come down and get a three. It's not a 4-point play. So it's just a bunch of stuff, man. It's just a bunch of nonsense. I can't stand playing against the Lakers in clutch situations because, again, you already know the referees are going to have a lookout for that, and LeBron wasn't even on the court tonight. It's just, again, man, LeBron is a great player. Anthony Davis is a great player. It's the culture. If Alex Caruso can be a mule, he can be a mule that does all the hard-working things you love. But, again, when you put on that purple and gold, man, there's so much nonsense. Rachel Nichols in the jump, all of it, everything, just first things first, it's all going to be bent. And first things first with Nick Wright tomorrow. The Lakers, man, they're going to be just fine. They beat the 3 seed Denver Nuggets without LeBron James. When LeBron James comes back, they're going to be just fine because they have the two best players in the NBA, 2 MVP candidates, and yada yada yada. And all of it is going to be continuing to disrespect the Denver Nuggets, continuing to disrespect Nikola Jokic, continue to disrespect the fact that they are experiencing injury issues worse than any elite team in the NBA. No elite team in the NBA has work injury luck other than the Denver Nuggets, and they're still the 3 seed. They still have the best record of all 4 teams that were in the conference finals last year. But nobody's going to talk about it. Because you know what? Nikola Jokic is fumbling. He's stumbling into the MVP trophy by default. Because LeBron and Joel and all these major players are hurt. That's the conversation. This isn't me telling you this. This is what is going to be said repeatedly. Skip Bayless said it today that he's winning by default, not because he's having an all-time NBA season. It's frustrating. Serbia, Croatia, Russia, Mongolia, China, Japan, Argentina, Ecuador. If you're a part of the Balkan community, if you're a part of the entire South American community, if you're talking Canada, Mexico, all of you that have listened to this platform, I am expressing to you decades of frustration. Not just tonight, not just this year, not just tonight. Decades of frustration of being from Denver and hearing and watching the Lakers continue to get the most entitled and the most privileged seat at every table because they're the Lakers, not because they really have earned it. They didn't build their team. They bought their team. LeBron James walked to the Lakers because he wanted to, because he wanted to be a mogul, which, again, I support. I was glad that he did it. But then you buy Anthony Davis, and all of a sudden you're a contender. You go from missing the playoffs 6 years in a row to winning the NBA Finals. Yet the Nuggets do everything the right way. They fight, they claw, they're dealing with more injuries than any other elite team in the NBA. But yet they don't get the respect. So it's frustrating. I'm not really tripping, man. The Nuggets are still sitting in number 3 seed. They got the New York Knicks coming tomorrow on a back-to-back. No, they got them on Wednesday, rather. That's a winnable game. They got Utah, winnable game. They got Brooklyn, that's a winnable game. Then they got Charlotte, then Minnesota, then Detroit. and then Portland. So we're on the home stretch, man. Anyway, y'all, that's going to do it. Swipe a gang. We out. I'll see y'all Wednesday.